You'll be doing the presentation. I want to invite you to the podium to share with the country the data of who is paying and who is not paying. Please do come up to the podium. Many of you have been asking us, and it's better that those who hold the data speak to it. The finance minister only mentioned one part, which was Greater Accra. But the data goes beyond that part, so he will share that data with us. And then I'll invite the Ghana Health Service. Dr. Patrick Umar-Boaji and his team are here to share with us the latest on COVID, and they will also deal with their findings on reports that our airport testing system has been compromised. Welcome. Yeah, the microphone is on. Please increase the volume for me.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Minister, and thank you, colleagues around. That is the first thing I want to mention from the introduction that the Minister just did. The quotation he quoted from the Bank of Ghana report was talking about revenue performance as at May. But unfortunately, I didn't have that information. I should have brought a similar performance to compare so that we see exactly what was happening. But I prepared on the half-year performance for you to see what you have done so far as at the end of June. And we are into July, which is just ending, the revenue situation. So I will show you the performance as at the end of June, and then things that we are doing to improve revenue performance. Thank you. Let me start from. Sorry, is somebody? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, the first slide. I just want to inform you that for the year 2021, the total tax revenue budget for GRA for the organization was 57 billion. The authority or the organization has been asked to or tasked to collect 57 billion as non-oil tax revenue for the fiscal year 2021. Now, as at the end of June, we are going to see what we have done so far. Now, if you look at this target, it represents 25.7% growth over the actual performance that took place at the end of 2020. And the amount we collected for the fiscal year 2020 amounted to 45.4 billion. So we're 13.5%. Now, the authority itself has decided that they will do above these targets that the government has given to us by collecting 60 billion. And if you look at that amount in terms of growth, it represents 14.2% of the collection I just mentioned for 2020. And in terms of GDP, it means that if we are able to make the 60 billion, then we are moving our tax to GDP ratio to 14.2%. And the budget target for it is 26.1 billion, meaning that we are slightly behind target by 212 million, and that is about 0.8%. 0.8%, looking at the revenue that we have collected at the end of the month of June. That is half-year performance. Now, by looking at these figures and comparing to our performance last year, what we have identified is that the collection as of June 2021 over June 2020, we have recorded a growth of 25.6%. That's the northern side. We have recorded a growth of 39.6%. Now, the next slide shows these revenues. If you can move forward here. You will see that as at the end of June, The total revenue collected, as I mentioned earlier on, is 25.89 billion. That is the green line. And then the target is 26.1 billion. And then the shortfall of 212 million is indicated in terms of percentage as 0.8%. Now, out of by 36.48 million, that is about the total collection I've just mentioned, which is the 25.89 billion. Now, apart from these revenues, there are other revenues that GRA collects, which is not part, does not form part of our targets, but we use our resources in collecting it, and the same officers, the same resources. So it's better we get to know those ones. And few ones I'll mention are energy debt recovery, and then energy recovery accounts, and then pollution and sanitation levy. Now, if you add these revenues so far collected to the 25.89 billion, then from January to June ending, GRA has collected 27.17 billion, and the target for it is 27.2 billion, meaning that there is a slight shortfall of 28 million, which is about 0.1%. So that is the situation, the real figures of collections that we have made so far from beginning of the year to end of June. Now, I must add that the figures paid to taxpayers who are due for refunds. Then we have the airport tax, which is ceded to the airport company that they use in running the airport and renovating the place. We have some of the revenues that go to ECOWAS. All of these are part of the collections I've just mentioned. And GRA also retains some portion to run the organization. So all these come out of the collections I just mentioned. And when we get to Bank of Ghana, part of this collection I mentioned goes into the consolidated accounts for government to use to meet the expenditure. So for the figures that Honorable Minister mentioned, we need to know the source that the figure is coming from before we can do the reconciliation. Now, if you look at the slide on the screen, the red line shows the target month by month, and then is it blue? The blue line shows the actual collection. And you can see that January we fell behind target, February we were behind target, but March we exceeded the target. The correction in April was almost the same as the target, close, very close. The same thing happened in May, and then if you look at June, we exceeded the target slightly over there. Is it excess or short? I think the correction exceeded the target in June slightly. And then the next slide, you can see the pattern of performance of the tax revenue from the money till the end of the quarter before they make the payment. That's why you have that kind of pattern or trend of payment over the years. And if you look at the trend, the gap between 2021 first half year and that of 2020, you can see where we were. In 2020, the collection, even some of the months, fell below the previous years, 2019. And so you will see the trend line falling below the 2020 performance. But this year, things are better. If you look at the gap between the performance of 2019, 2020, you can see that there is an improvement in revenue collection. Now, I want you to look at the next slide, which is slide 7. That shows the performance over the years from 2015 up to 2021. What we have done here is just to look at the collection trend from January to June and compare the performance to what happens from July to December. Now, starting from 2015, you could see that the total revenue that was collected for the year 47.4% of it was collected between January to June. And then the rest of the revenue, which constituted, I think, 52.6%, was collected from July to December. 46%. And then July to December, the collection normally percent. And so we are left with 52.4% of the target to collect from July to December. And on average, we've been collecting 54%. But now we have 52.4% to collect. Now, if you compare that one to our and see whether the trend of performance is on course or we are below the performance. Now, the next slide. If you look at it, domestic tax division, domestic revenues, domestic taxes, this year has constituted 47% of the total revenue collected. In 2020, it was 49%. It means that there is a slight drop from 49 to 47%. Now, in the area of customs, in 2020, same period, customs had roped in 26% of the revenue. This year, customs has collected 27% of the revenue I just mentioned to you. And indirect taxes, VAT, excise, and the rest, has also constituted 24%, but in 2020, at the same period, it formed 25%. So this shows that the performance in the area of international trade, the customs, has improved. And once that one is improving, it means that the percentage shares of the other sectors will also go down. Now, I have about 71. Okay, sorry. Okay. So 71% has been collected by the domestic tax revenue division. Now, the next slide. Yeah, here, I just want you to know the revenues that we've been collecting at the regional levels. What are we getting? As the Honorable Minister said, most of the revenues that we've been collecting is coming from Greater Accra. Now, our records shows that we have about 89% of the total revenue that we collect annually. How best we can raise the revenue. That's why the GRA has its own strategies, which I will mention some of them to you, to help improve this trend. The next region that's giving us the highest revenue. The next region that follows in terms of the percentages is Western region. And that is giving us 1.42%. But Ashanti region falls, I think, at the third position, and we get 1.24% of the revenue from Ashanti region. So you can see the regions. For the lack of time, let me leave that session. And as I said earlier on, there are other tax types that we add to this to get the regional distributions. And one of it is the 1% withholding taxes that we pick from the port. It also forms part of the domestic revenue. And that gives us 0.59% of the total revenue of domestic tax division. And then we have stamp duties. That also gives us 0.11. And then special petroleum tax gives us 0.45%. So when we add all this, then we get the 100% of revenues that are generated domestically. It means that at the regional levels, including Greater Accra, we are able to raise 92.86. That's 92.86 or 86% of the revenue. And the other tax types also add on to the 100%. Now, the next slide. Yeah, we tried looking at doing some small analysis to show or to see clearly what the regional collections look like. Now, we have an office we refer to as Large Taxpayers Office that has about 666 taxpayers. And these are the large companies we have in Ghana. That's why their affairs are setters. The other big companies if you remove them from it, it means that still Greater Accra is giving us 60% of the tax revenue. And what is surprising, I must draw your attention, is as the size of our Greater Kumasi or Greater Ashanti region. Looking at the economic activities in the country, we can see that when you remove Greater Accra from it, the next town or the next city is Ashanti region. That is supposed to give us the next highest tax revenue. But the trend of performance is not showing that. Takoradi is exceeding the revenue when we compare at the regional levels like that with Ashanti region. So there are a lot of things we need to do to improve. In fact, previously it wasn't like that. Ashanti region was directly following Greater Accra, but this trend has changed. So there are a lot of things GRA has put on the ground to help resolve these issues. And a few of them I will mention for you to take note of that are dealing with companies and individuals, so that at least we can capture whatever activity, business activities, economic activities people are doing, and to be able to take the necessary tax revenues from them. Then there is this automation, the automated domestic tax collection operations through digitalization. We are trying to ensure that instead of people walking to GRA offices to file and pay and do all tax transactions, wasting people's precious time, we go into digitalization processes to enhance compliance measures, to strengthen the tax administration, and also to ease doing business in Ghana. Now, another thing we are doing, I think you have heard about that one, that's the linking of taxpayers' identification number to the Ghana card, so that at any point in time, when you get into get your Ghana card number anywhere, we can identify you to see the type of business you are doing, the tax payment, for us to discover the kind of business people are doing, because housing numbers, ID, to the TIN, that's taxpayers' identification number. Some few information has now come out. We have been able to identify 0.7 million Ghana card numbers having so far been identified. And out of this, in terms of age, between 18 and 35, we have 7 we are talking about. What we have seen is that the analysis showed us that we have about 5,000 people who are having national ID numbers, but they were not having tax identification numbers. But that's overall, when we put all of them together, people who had national ID, but they didn't have TIN, amounted to, the number was 12 million. And this one, we try classifying them into those who can pay tax, those who cannot pay. So when we look at their records, we saw that about 5,000 people are high potential individuals who have businesses and living within Ghana. I'm not talking about Greater Accra alone. They have houses in places like East Legon, the affluent areas. 5,000 people live there. We have been able to identify their telephone numbers, their house numbers, and they didn't have TIN. So we are chasing them. Then apart from that, we have about, I think, 20,000 people who are also, that is in the cities in Ghana, who also have high-earning professions like doctors, lawyers, engineers, and these people are also not having TIN, and we are chasing them. But some of them, I think these people too have been able to identify their house numbers, and we have their telephone numbers, and surely we'll get to them. Their numbers have been spread to the locations that they are living, where their houses are, under our tax offices, and they are now being followed. But out of these numbers, we have people who also did not have any job, people who are in school, people who have retired, and so on. So when you look at the statistics, you will see them. But this linkage just to national ID card has been able to give us this kind of information to enable us to trace those people who are earning income in the country but were paying nothing so far. But if you look at the next table we look at first, those people we have, I think, about engineers, 22,000. We have medical professionals, we have 6,000. Financial professionals, we have 5,000. Those in computer science, we have 3,000. And then legal professionals, 7. And then executives, 14. And then others, 5,000. All this information is now in the hands of GRA, and we are pursuing them and ensuring that they all pay the taxes that is due them. Yeah, the next item that we are doing to help improve compliance in GRA is what you have heard, I think, quite recently, what we refer to as cashless policies. So far, GRA has leveraged the Ghana.gov platform to enable taxpayers fulfill their tax obligations by paying their taxes through channels like online. If you go to Ghana.gov, you can file and pay your tax online. You can also pay your taxes at the banks. So far, we are working with 23 banks. So you can go to any of these banks and pay your taxes. Or you can use the mobile money code star 222 hash mobile menu code, and that area too you can pay your taxes. And then some also have another form where people use cards in paying the taxes due instead of coming to the office to issue either a check or pay physical cash. Then we are also doing online filing, which now online filing platforms, integrated tax application and preparation system that we call ITAS, has also been launched somewhere in the second quarter. And it was launched in second quarter 2019. And people can go there and easily pay their taxes or file their returns from there. Then the last aspect I want to talk about is the use of VAT withholding method of collecting the taxes. You know, when people pay VAT, two people are in transactions, I'm surprised somebody is also paying. Now, I need to retain the VAT, a percentage of it, and pay, so that once I pay, the person who was supposed to collect and pay the VAT on my behalf, his name and his records will easily be identified by GRA. And since we started this, it has greatly helped in identifying people who have collected VAT over the period and have refused to pay the monies to GRA. There are so many other things that GRA is trying to do in such a way that the informal sector especially will be able to dig deep into it, just like what other countries are doing, so that we can improve tax revenue. I think because of time, Honorable Minister, I will leave you here, and then if there are any questions, then we'll come. Thank you.
I'm going to take questions shortly. I just want to read through a few things that have hit me quite hard as you went through the presentation. Now, first, you spoke about the target that was set and how well you are doing to meet the target. The target of, let's say, 15%, and we are almost meeting that target. In one breath, we can say we are doing well in meeting the target we have set for ourselves. But if you compare to taxable capacity, then it means that we have some way to go. And then it brings us to the second part, the analysis that you did. Please go to the regional slides. That give a worrying picture. And colleagues, I beg of you to pay attention to these two slides. One, that is not adjusted for the LTO. Correct, Doctor? Doc, this one is not adjusted for LTO. Yes, it's not adjusted for LTO. And then the second one is adjusted for LTO. And it shows the wide disparity in terms of the regions. So you can pick your region and then you can decide whether it is going on or not going on. But even more importantly, and perhaps, Doc, moving forward, maybe we'll ask you to get us some more data. If you compare contribution to GDP by region and contribution to revenue by region, we can also see in a clearer manner who has a lot of economic activity but is not contributing their quota to the national kitty. And when they adjust, at least in the area of professionals, about 33,000 professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, computer scientists, financial service providers, other executives. About 33,500 of us are engaged in economic activity. We earn incomes, but we are not paying our due. And Doc, correct me if I'm wrong, this is only those who you know because of national ID. So it is theoretically possible that there are a lot more who you don't know because they don't have national ID for you to even begin to start triangulating. Am I correct? Yeah, you are correct. Okay, so at least what we know is 33,500 just professionals only, doctors, lawyers, engineers, computer scientists, financial service providers, and executives. And I think it raises questions. And you've broken it down even to the specific categories that you can now engage upon. It's data that is good for us to share at this point in time. It's a good time to take your questions.
The income tax law passed in 2015 has a provision on the tax modification that seeks to give a proper streamline and methods to be able to collect revenue from the informal sector, because tax modification, because GRA is supposed to implement that. Do we have that in check to be able to monitor revenue mobilization within the informal sector?
Thank you. Giade?
Yeah. How are you also mobilizing revenue from the tax on the rent? I know homeowners are gaining a lot of money by charging rent advance, and they're supposed to pay 8% to government. What have you done so far to mobilize money from that source? Then the 33,500 high-earning professionals, you say you have to identify them and you are chasing them. If you are chasing them, would there be, if they refuse, would there be any possible prosecution? Because for a while you have been earning high salaries, but they are not paying anything to government. Now that you have identified them, do you have any plans of prosecuting them if they fail to do so? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions, colleagues? Yes, Nana.
Yeah, good afternoon, Honourable Minister.
Go ahead.
Doc, one major problem is leakages. There's a well-known fact that people who are normally going to collect taxes do their own thing on the field. So what are you going to do as it were to plug the hole so that all the revenue will come to the agency? Because it's a big problem all over the country. And then people are complaining that they are having difficulty at the ports with the GRA officials and some national security operatives. Recently, I went to a workshop and it came out that after having paid all your duties at the port, people chase you sometimes in the middle of the road, and then they try to offload your distance to reassess it. I don't know if you are aware. What are you doing to that thing? Because it created a lot of nuisance for the traders. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Bloomberg, do you have a question? Yes, okay, quickly.
Thank you very much. I would love to know how far we've come with our targets, what percentage we are meeting by the middle of the year, and whether or not we are on course to achieve that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to take responses to this first set, and then I'll come back. I think the question from Bloomberg, it was right at the beginning of the presentation, about 90-something% on target already. But the question really is the target your taxable capacity, or what's the gap between your taxable capacity and your target? So, Doc, over to you.
Thank you. Let me take your question. But as I introduce myself, I'm the head of. Yeah, we know the targets that we are setting is not the potential that we have. we did an estimation with the help of HMRC, that is with our counterpart institution in UK, to estimate our potential for VAT. Actually, if you want to see the potential, you can't do it for overall tax revenue. We have different various tax types that we handle. So potential tax revenues are estimated by tax types. So we worked out that one out, and we saw our potential in VAT from 2012. To us, all Ghanaians, we can't say only one person. We work, those of us who are working for the government, your salary will never be escaped. It will be taken from it, whether you like it or not, before you get your income or your salary at the end of the month. What about individuals who are doing their own businesses? So it's so difficult to trace somebody who has earned his income, put it into his pocket, and you want to go there and collect part of that revenue. We can only do that when education is carried out throughout the economy for everybody to know why there's a need for us to support the government through taxation, for the government to run the economy for us. This year, so you would like to come in to support me. And some of the areas.
You can bring the microphone to him. You can bring the microphone to him. So please make your point. When you are done, I'll let him just contribute to it.
Okay, thank you. Let me talk about the rent tax. Yeah, rent tax with the help of GIZ. GRA is working with the Ministry of Local Government. And they have helped us to come out with some, how do I even describe it? Strategies that we can use to get to know where the houses are, the owners, those that are for commercial basis, and the rest. In fact, they have covered Tema, they have covered part of Medina, and I don't know if tax is one of the source of income for the governments. But Ghana, I think our income that is coming from property tax is nothing to talk about. And our rent tax too is so low. But we can only get the rent tax when we know the purpose of the house, we know who is living there, what is being done to it. If it is for accommodation, that is a different thing. If it is for commercial businesses, that is a different thing. The rates are all different. So when we are able to identify this, and with the help of GIZ, this project is going on. I think very soon we'll be able to cover Greater Accra and Kumasi in such a way that will help us to improve our rent tax collection.
There's a question about whether or not there are penalties or prosecutions for the 33,500 professionals.
Oh, yes.
Who are not paying.
These people, as I told you, we have their housing numbers, we know where they are living, we have their telephone numbers. But once you have this, it doesn't mean that the person has not paid taxes. As I told you, they have
national
card,
ID,
but they don't have
find them on the tax database.
You see, they don't have the tax identification number. So we are inviting them to the office to have discussions with them, to know what they are doing, the business that they are doing, and also to identify them to see whether they pay taxes or not. So for the fact that we have identified them by not having the ID card, national ID card, and not having TIN doesn't mean that they don't pay tax. We need to get a person, interview the person, because you must remember that taxes are paid on income earned, and you have to identify the income the person has earned before you can identify the tax that the person has to pay. So that is the level that we are. The data was extracted, I think, about 3 months ago, and we are now chasing them to know these people, to find out why they don't have tax identification number, and also to find out whether they are paying their taxes or not.
Doc, there's a question about how you're plugging leakages among tax collectors. Are you automating or digitizing in any way that's allowing you to plug those leakages?
That one too. In fact, I told earlier on that we have now stopped paying checks and cash in GRA offices. We are trying as much as possible to reduce the personal contacts that taxpayers have with our offices. Now, if you get to the port right now, there's a new system that has been introduced, the ICOMS. And the ICOMS is bringing great difference between what GCNet was doing previously and what ICOMS is giving to us. Now, if you look at the CIF that we have this year, for the first half year, and you look at the breakdown of the taxes that we're getting from it, most of the revenue was where the CIF was going into zero rated and exempt. I didn't know that question would come here. I would have brought that for you to see the table of how much CIF is now being taxed at 1%, taxed at 5%, 10%, and then 20%, compared to what was happening in the previous years. The trend has changed completely because the personal contacts, the interpersonal contacts with the importers and the traders, because of the ICOMs, have now reduced, and that is helping us to improve revenue collection. So when we start using this online filing, online payments, and payment through banks, and people are not going
government services and also deal with your returns. Very finally, do you have a comment on the report that trade facilitation bureaucracies still exist, despite all the paperless and all the things that have been spoken about?
Honorable, what I can say is that with ICOMs, that one has greatly reduced. It is not out of the system completely, but it's greatly reduced.
But it's greatly reduced.
Let me come back to a question where I think a question came from you, where we look at how our borders are right now, the way it is. Now, people use motorbikes, they use all kinds of things to bring in imported items in base into the country, and then they gather them and then move out. Now, we paid should range between 30 and 80%. And that whatever revenue that is paid over there, your details should be put on WhatsApp. We created a WhatsApp platform, which our managers, commissioners were on, and that one we placed there. And when you are coming, anytime that you get to any checkpoint, the officer there will just indicate that you have paid your taxes, you examine and see that the goods have not changed, and then you move on. When you get to another level, another person will check, and it will work perfectly for us. But unfortunately, that when you pass through that place, you pay higher duty, lower duties than passing through Tema. So we had to go around, interview the officers, interview the traders, and somewhere in, I think in July or June, I think early July, Commissioner General came out with a policy that that system should be suspended, and that everybody should go through the normal tax of, normal way of paying taxes. And that one too didn't go well with the traders. We are still talking to them to ensure that we can't treat people passing through Ho as special people, whilst all other countries, all other border points will be using the normal system of paying taxes.
Differently.
Yeah, so we are still talking to them. I think we have our Commissioner Operations.
Yeah, so is there a quick comment that any of you wants to make? We are running out of time.
I don't know if you have something to add.
Very quickly, go ahead.
What we are doing to stop the leakage, if you can brief us on something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I just wanted to add up to the renters. We are using the GPS also to trace. In addition to what he said, we have a project that a project team which is going around to ensure that we are able to map up all the properties that people have especially in the Greater Accra region, so that we'll be able to, out of that, we'll know which one has been rented out and then which ones are just being accommodated by the owners.
Okay.
And out of that, we'll be able to collect the renters, and then from there, we are sure that we'll be able to improve the renters.
Very well.
Which is very, very important.
Well. Jerry, I want to thank you. Dr. Adai, I want to thank you for your time. We have run out of time. We would have to move to the COVID briefing. Dr. Adai, I want to thank you for your time and for your ability to be here with your team to share insights with us this afternoon. May you please resume your seats. Colleagues, I'm sure you got all the highlights of their presentation. There's a question of taxable capacity. If elsewhere around the world they are doing about 25% of GDP, and we are setting a target of 14, 15% of GDP, that's about 10% of GDP. Where is it going? And then there's the other question about the regional base and those who are known to the national ID, and about 33,500 who are known to the national ID system, but you can't find them in the TIN database. And this is even just those who are known to GRA. So if the person is not even on national ID, you can't even do that comparison. I believe that the way the subject, for example, of debt and deficit consumes our attention, debt and deficit is a product or is a consequence of revenue performance. I believe that the way it consumes our attention, we should also do well to have the question of revenue consume our attention in similar manner. And let's have a conversation, an open, truthful conversation among ourselves. and see if we can do this together. I want to go to the Ghana Health Service. Dr. Patrick Umabwaji and team are here. The COVID numbers are getting very worrying. We're close to about 5,000, if not more already. Dr. Baje will give us an update, but principally we'll also be speaking to the suggestions that our airport testing systems have been compromised. Doc, please join us at the podium. Ghana Revenue Authority, we thank you for your time. I know tomorrow is a media review, so you have a series of meetings ongoing, so you have our permission to leave while we do our COVID briefing. Thank you. Dr. Baje, we're in your hands.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Good afternoon, all. The media, colleague directors, Honorable Minister of Information. As was said, our presentation will be in two parts. I'll give you the general update so far, and then Dr. Dennis Lai, the head of surveillance, and also who has oversight, been a significant increase in recorded cases over the last 4 weeks, as you can all see from the website or the dashboard. We also have an increasing number of severe and critical cases, especially in Accra and Kumasi, and a few of the regional capitals. We are also having an increasing number of cases among the international arrivals at the Kotoka International Airport. And as you have already seen, anytime there's an outbreak, you see that reflected at the airport. We are also experiencing some increases in school outbreaks. Not significant though, but at least it moved from one school to another, and this is something that we need to bring to an end. The number of visitors that are reporting daily continue to increase. Previously, we were reporting just a few, Greater Accra, Metro, and its environs. Now we are seeing some spillover into some of the neighboring districts. Adherence to protocols still remains very poor across all the regions, and the probability of a much severe third wave is high if we do not increase our adherence to the protocols. So as at 25th of July, we have recorded in total 2,269 cases. We've done about 1.4 million tests. Total recoveries about 97,213, which is the difference between the total cases and active cases. The active cases about 4,983, and the reported deaths so far, as calculated on the 25th, is 823 deaths. I think you can see the curves. I would say that the two and a main epidemic, which is Greater Accra up there. You can see the rise. This is up to about, say, about a week ago. And down is Kumasi. So you can see that spike is pushing the national data up. And so the active cases continue to now go up very significantly and a very steep rate. So a lot has to be done to ensure that we don't get into a more severe situation than we had in the February-March episode. Among the international travelers, as at 27th of July, we have had a total of 2,249 cases, and total tests done so far is 390,520 cases. A significant number, about 2/3 of the numbers, are non-Ghanaians. You also see that even though July has not ended, we have actually crossed the number we got in April, and we are heading towards the January-February numbers. And that are our airport cases. You can see that in terms of the total number of countries who are bringing in more cases, you can see the top 10, starting from the USA, Nigeria, UK, and down, and so forth. So those are the areas we are having, and that is why we tend to have people from that area complaining because they are also contributing the number of positive coming into the country. Subsequently, the Director's surveillance will speak to that, and we'll see how these things tend to refer. It's also important that one of the key areas to look at is what is our bed state? How are we doing as far as the cases are concerned? Currently, case on admission across the country is 248. 17 are critical. Severe cases about 86 across the country, and total and mild cases 143. So you can see that even though the mild to moderate still are higher, we are having 17 critical cases, and that is still quite significant compared to the last time we shared the update. The schools remain practically the same. A few outbreaks have been recorded cumulatively of 2,647 since school reopened, with 93% recovery. Currently, there are about 166 active cases going on. We have about 38 in OT, which is just coming since the last 3 days, and that school we're still monitoring to see how we can contain Bono E7 and Bono 1. As we see in school, is in order of preference, the highest in Ashanti, followed now by OT and Greater Accra as the third in terms of the number of cases. Okay, so the most of the other region from central, northern, northeast, northern, Savannah, upper east, upper west, Volta, western, and western north, there's no active case in the schools. In terms of the vaccine, I think not much has changed in terms of the number of doses that has been given. But in terms of the outlook for vaccines in the pipeline, there's been some changes. We're having about 1.229 Pfizer coming from the US through COVAX facility is to be coming in soon. We are here to confirm the dates. We try not to give date, but as soon as we have an indicative date, we'll share. We also have an AstraZeneca of 249,600 has been shared earlier. We're hoping early August it should be in. We've had a deposit made for the 17 million Johnson & Johnson with the African Union, which the date is yet to be decided when we will start receiving them. But what is new is the fact that we are going to get some AstraZeneca from Korea. This is something we didn't talk about. This is new, and that will be in August, and as well as Pfizer, another 100,000 with a date to be decided. And so the number continues to increase. We are hoping that we'll have a lot more, and then if you start having the 17 million come in, that'll be the time we can significantly vaccinate more people. So the outlook generally is that we are experiencing a third wave, a major spike that can be described as a third wave. There's a higher risk that the severe third wave may have a higher, much more severe wave compared to the second if nothing is done. And this is happening because we are also still not adhering to the protocols, and we would have expected a lot more people adhering to the protocol, but we've still not seen enough. We're going to start there's mask surveys to see home treatment, and that's why we are enforcing more facility isolation. And one of the key challenges we are having is the fact that our vaccination coverage is still low. So basically, that is where we are. But I'll ask Dr. Dennis Lai will go on to give us what is happening at the airport, just to explain the rationale behind the setting up the center to test, looking at how the virus behaves, what is the protocol at the system, what is the rationale for that protocol, and also share with you some of other countries' protocol dealing with the same challenges that we are facing. So I'll end here, and Dr. Dennis Lai will continue.
Has the system been compromised, or
No. We know, and Dr. Lai will say we do daily checks. FDA goes to verify the system very well all the time. For those who are there, on the third day, for sequencing reasons, we also do a PCR for comparison. But like I said, these are not two, they are two different tests, and they are two different attributes. So, but Dr. Lai will just do that. So the system has not been compromised.
Thank you very much, Honorable, and thank you very much, DG. Is to prevent the importation of diseases into a country. So any infectious disease of concern. In this particular instance is COVID-19. So prior to COVID-19, we had port health services going on at the Kotoka International Airport. And so we're going to look at KIA, what we're doing there currently, but we'll also look at other countries. Sometimes the impression is created as though Ghana is the only country that is enforcing COVID-19 testing in relation to travel. So, next slide. So we developed the guidelines which looked at things that anybody who's coming into Ghana must know before they come in. So pre-departure, the information on the requirements for travel to Ghana, these are available in multiple websites, and I'll give examples. So, for example, on our Ghana Health Service website, that is information is there. We have the International Association of Air Travel, International Air Travel Association, IATA. They have a platform called Thematic, and there's also a website. And that information, as far as Ghana is concerned on our requirements, is also there. It's clearly stated. So eligible passengers, for example, are required to pay for their COVID-19 testing prior to embarking on their journey. And passengers can also complete what we call the health declaration form, which is also available online. So they can complete that even before they embark on their journey. But it's also available at the airport, and in subsequent slides we'll show. So this is the Thematic website, and I've put the link down there so we can all go and check for ourselves. And it provides information for people who want to come to Ghana on the COVID-19 requirements. And it even gives links to the payment sites and also to the health declaration form. The next one is going to look at the Ghana Airport Company, because obviously not everybody may have heard of Thematic, but we know that the airport company is responsible for running our airports. So that information is also pasted there, and the link is also down there. We can be able to verify that. And of course, the Ghana Health Service website, the whole guideline is in the PDF form as we presented. That is also on our website for those who want to look at it. So this is the guideline. This is the back page of the document. It was developed before the airports were open for international flights in September 2020. It outlines the requirements for both Ghanaian citizens and non-Ghanaian citizens, and also provides guidance for other airports on arrival at KIA. And the only exception is for children under 5. To bring a PCR test from the country of origin if you leave and return within 7 days. Ghanaian citizens who test positive will be taken to a mandatory government-designated isolation center, and they will be tested on the 3rd day in line with our existing protocols. If they test negative, then they might go home. If they test positive, then we'll still do some further clinical assessment and make the determination on that. For non-citizens, again, it's mandatory. The testing on arrival is mandatory. You need to be in possession of a 72-hour COVID-19 test and result from an accredited lab in the country of origin. For non-Ghanaian citizens, they will be sent also, if they test positive, to a designated isolation area, but that is usually a hotel, and the cost for this isolation will be borne by the passenger. Now, the exemptions for the 72-hour PCR test that is required on arrival, I think I mentioned those who go and they will be required to test. The exemptions for mandatory testing on arrival, again, that looks at children under 5. So children under 5 are not required to test. Airline crew, again, will not be required to test on arrival if they are able to show proof that they are adhering to their airline testing policy. Passengers in transit who will not exit the terminal building will not also be required to do the testing on arrival. And passengers who arrive because a flight is diverted or for whatever emergency will not be required to test on arrival. So long as they stay in the terminal, or if they have to be moved to a hotel, so long as they've done there is an immunofluorescent assay test for COVID-19. This has undergone testing and approval by our Food and Drugs Authority. And antigen tests generally are known to pick diseases much earlier than PCR tests. So very early stage in the disease, an antigen test is more likely to show that the person has it and done other tests. And the sensitivity when the FDA assessed the testing that is being done at the airport was about 99%, which means that if you test 100 people and they are all positive, you will find that positivity in 99 of them. So that's the sensitivity of the test. And as the Director General of Ghana Health Service indicated, the Food and Drugs Authority does regular review of the operations of the lab at the airport for quality assurance purposes. And they have their own internal quality checks as well. In addition, everybody who tests positive, the test is repeated to be sure that the person is positive. And one of the experiences passengers who have tested positive will tell you is that usually they stay longer at the airport. They are delayed, and that is because of this process. So again, we need to clarify the disease testing process and the regime, the disease process and the testing regime. You are only positive or negative at the time the sample was taken. So it's not like a blood group which is permanent. So at the time your sample was taken, so remember we said that PCR test is 72 hours before departure. So at the time you are taking the sample and it says it's negative, 3 days earlier when you arrive in Ghana, there's no way it should be positive. It's scientifically inaccurate, and I think that that point ought to be made clear. And as I indicated, we've also, one of the reasons why we also put this airport testing there, apart from the fact that people, even though they have tested negative, can still test positive on arrival, is the fact that people have come in with false or fake PCR test results. Now, if we can't guarantee that the results people are bringing in, and currently, even though the African Union is working through the African CDC to set a platform that would ensure that we are able to verify test results, we haven't gotten there fully yet. And so it's important that for these reasons, we have a test at the airport. And we show the numbers of persons who have tested positive on what is concerned. And I have to add that our object at the airport is not to absolutely eliminate the importation of COVID-19, but to reduce the risk of importation. So arrival formalities, there's a health declaration form I mentioned earlier on that has to be completed online. The payment is verified, and then the sample is collected at the airport. Then once we also have a system to do quality check for the data, because sometimes people enter the wrong information, and that has resulted in unnecessary delay. So there's another layer of portal staff who verify the information provided on the health declaration form. We do our temperature checking, and if the results are available at the time the passengers get to the first layer of the portal booth, it will be released to them. But if it's not, they go through immigration, claim their baggage, and then there's a second layer of booths for portal staff where they can get their results taken. So for those who test negative, they can then go through security. Aviation security usually is responsible for checking the results slip to be sure that they are negative before they allow them to go through to customs. And then for those who test positive, as I indicated earlier on, those who are Ghanaian citizens, we have designated isolation centers, and those who are foreigners as well, or non-citizens, they have designated places that they are sent to, and usually with security escorts to these designated locations. Quickly, I want us to look at the UK, because that's one country where a lot of our citizens also come from, and what their requirements are as far as COVID-19 travel is concerned. And one of the main things they will tell you is to find out the country you are coming from, what classification has been given to that country. So they have red, they have amber, and I think green. And the main focus is on the red and the green. So for the red, if your country is, if the country is red, then only their citizens or permanent residents can travel from the country that has been classified as red into their country. Let's go to the next slide. Yes. So those are for the red requirements, and then they have other strict regimen you have to follow, such as undergoing a mandatory quarantine, and you have to also pay prior to coming in for your testing and also for the hotel accommodation. And then for the amber countries, so the countries that are in the second tier, before you travel, it's the same thing. You need to also come in with a 72-hour PCR test result. You need to book and pay for COVID tests to be taken on arrival in the UK. And you need to also complete a passenger locator form, because they need to be able to trace you when they have to. And you will be under quarantine for 10 days, and they will do the COVID tests between the 2nd and the 8th day. Again, if you look at Canada, for example, they have exemptions for children under 5, but they also require that you bring a 72-hour mandatory PCR test. There are no exemptions if you are fully vaccinated, and I think this point ought to be stressed as concerned and experiences from other countries. And I think that we will be happy to take some questions if there are, to clarify on the testing and particularly the activities at the Kotoka International Airport portal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've got just about 10 minutes to take questions. Now is the time to put up your hand and then to have your question asked. Yes, I think Sika has a question. We know we are biased towards ladies, so yes, yeah.
Yes, so I want to know how many facilities have the capacity to test specifically for the new variant, the Delta variant. Yes, because we spoke to the director of the Takoradi Veterinary Center, and he said that although they are recording a lot of positive cases, they don't know if they are dealing with the Delta variant or not. So I want to know if how many of these facilities, and if there's just a few of them, what is being done to ensure that a lot of the hospitals can.
Thank you, Sika. So, Doc, while you're answering that, you have to nuance between the test for positive or negative and then the genomic sequencing. So when they test, are they testing for the type of variant, or are they testing for positive and negative? And then when they want to do the genomic sequencing, how many facilities do you have that are able to do that? And really, how many facilities do you need for that? Let me take others. Yes, Nana, we have to be very quick.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have two questions. The man from the airport, I had a discussion
It's not the man from the airport.
I had a discussion on the TV saying that the contract for that testing has been given to a foreign company. How true is that? Because people are saying that in Ghana here, something like maybe Luguchi could have done the same thing. Why giving it to a foreign company instead of a Ghanaian? I don't know if it's true.
No, that question has been answered already. We did it here, right here.
Okay.
When the antigen test was introduced, we answered that question here.
Yeah, Doc, but a month ago, I didn't indicate that Ghana was in a third wave. We were a little bit evasive. Now you have confirmed that you're in a third wave. Now, what do you expect from the third wave? Because people are saying that the new variant data comes with a different symptoms that you may not see it. It is very imperceptible. You don't even feel it, but it comes very quickly. So what must we do as a country to avoid going to some of these challenges? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. GNA, very final one.
I have about 3 questions. So
let's be quick. Let's be quick.
Yes. The president last address on Sunday, if you tally the vaccine that you expected in the country by September, it's about 18.4 million. And people have raised doubts whether Ghana is going to receive that these vaccines, because in March, when he addressed the nation, he promised 1.3 million by May, and we couldn't receive that. And so how are you assuring the nation that now that even other countries are experiencing third wave and we are also needing the vaccine, how are you sure that we are not going to be disappointed once again by not getting that?
I just want to make a quick point to that, because I remember the text of the president's speech. The president did not promise. He said that we have a target, that this is what we want to meet by this point in time. There are about 3 channels for getting it: donations, procurement, and then local, hopefully, a local assemblage of any. And we have time and time again briefed you on the difficulties in the global supply chain. So let's be careful about creating a narrative that the president promised and that promise has not been fulfilled. I just want to put that there. Please go ahead.
Okay, so even though I'm not satisfied with that.
No, I've not answered you. I've not answered you. I'm just giving context. He will give you an answer.
Okay.
I just need to make that context clear. Else, before you realize, then the conversation is spiraling somewhere else.
Yeah, so I hope you give further details, because I'm really worried. Then my second question is Ghana vaccine. When? If all these things are successful. Thank you.
Yeah, Doc, go ahead. Please respond to all the questions.
Yeah, thank you. I think this Delta question, if you answer it again, we don't test for the variant, we just test for COVID. And there are so many variants. And by only hearing, the numbers you hear are fewer than the ones you don't hear. But we have variants of interest and variants of concern. So we tend to focus more on the variant of concern. In terms of the sequencing, we sample. You do random sampling, samples are taken and tested, and then we'll cut across and say, give it percentage. And that's what will give you an indication that this is the most prevalent variant, or that's the least variant. So it's not that you do every test, you do a variant for that. It doesn't happen like that. So currently, Alpha is still the most dominant before the Delta. The Delta will continue to come in. You said the last one that we talked about the third wave and that we're being evasive. There's a very, very classical definition for a wave. Until you get there, you don't say it. In a wave, you see a stepwise increase in numbers. When you have an increase that is stagnating, that is not a wave yet. And so it was not being evasive. We're just telling you what it is. Now we can see we are seeing an increase, so we can now move in. So we don't go to jump in. People were saying we are there. Forecasting is different from saying this is where we are. The number of vaccines. I'm sure if you listen to me today, I've added 2 more lines that was not available when the president spoke. Okay? And so it doesn't mean that that's the only vaccine that's going to come in now. There are still efforts. If there are promises, additional ones will come in. It's even possible that we'll probably, if you have to start vaccinating children 12 years and above, our target has to go up. So I don't think it's say that the only vaccines available. The vaccines that are in the pipeline, once you do a negotiation and you have an indication that we're going to get it, then it becomes part of the pipeline. And so maybe tomorrow it may change. And so I don't think it is right. Vaccine production is a process, and I think there's a committee put together to look at the processes, the research, the art, the airport, that as we have seen, this is the rationale behind the testing. That because the virus has an incubation period of 2 to 14 days, that's why all countries have different systems. If you go to Korea, irrespective of your outcome, you're going to a mandatory quarantine for 14 days before you're allowed to go out to do anything. Okay? So everybody has ways. There's a designated lab that will come and take your sample and give you your results. And you don't go back and do your own test and go and show it to them. But when I did mine, it was negative, so yours is false. You have to respect state protocols, and that's what it is. And so that's where we are trying to explain that we are very confident in our system. And when you start seeing cases rise around the countries in the world, you see the number appear at the airport also going up. That shows that the machine is quite sensitive. The fact that you are negative 3 days ago, or even 2 hours ago, doesn't mean that you will not be positive in the next 2 hours. It's a multiplication. Just moving from negative to positive is just a question of a few minutes. depending on how much the titer is increasing. So nobody can say, and it's also wrong to compare two different samples, and in what is, especially even when they are taking different dates, and say when I arrived in the night, they say I'm positive. When I did one the following morning, I'm negative. You have to understand the way the virus
allow us today. Tomorrow, I think it's Thursday, we'll meet in Parliament for the mid-year review, and we will engage you, I think, by the end of the week. Thank you so much. All the best.